Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I am your host, Jordan Jones. Purdue football returns to action early this week on Friday night with a road trip up to Minnesota. I will get you ready for the matchup here on the show today in a game that Purdue really needs to win to bounce back after a disappointing loss to Northwestern a week ago. Minnesota comes in just 1-3 on the season. Their one win came against a COVID-depleted Illinois team in a blowout victory 2 weeks ago, but they were handled easily by Michigan, lost in overtime to Maryland, and last week were blown out on Friday night against Iowa. This is an interesting team as they won 11 games a season ago, capped off with a big Outback Bowl victory versus Auburn. And it was really P.J. Fleck's breakthrough season up there in his third year in Minneapolis. They had a huge win in Penn State. That was when game day came to Minneapolis for the first time in game day history. And the Gophers had a huge win in that on a noon kickoff. To dive right into our Purdue Weekly Report, it was revealed this week that quarterback Aiden O'Connell was not 100% for Purdue in their game against Northwestern. We really didn't know how bad anything was until Thursday's press conference when Jeff Brom indicated that O'Connell would be a game-time decision for the matchup against Minnesota Friday night. He did indicate that Jack Plummer will be Purdue's number 2 option in that game if O'Connell cannot go. He did also bring up a few other injury situations. Running back King Doru made his season debut last week against Northwestern in very limited action. He's still not 100%, but I do expect to see him in a more expanded role this week. He is hopeful that George Karlaftis, Purdue's star sophomore defensive end, and Rondale Moore, the junior wide receiver, would make returns this week. Karlaftis was able to dress last week against Northwestern. Wasn't playing at all. We will see. Maybe he'll be on the field for third downs this week. Might be the most logical option there. With Rondale Moore, who knows? The conversation really got accelerated when Purdue released the statement, as they had in their first 2 games, that Rondale Moore would not be available for the matchup with Northwestern. And in the post-game press conference, Greg Doyle of the Indianapolis Star, he questioned Jeff Brom pretty good on this. Asked some really good questions that, really hadn't been asked up to this point. Really made it, asking is Rondale essentially just telling you whether he's going to play every week or not. Really interesting. It sounds like we're probably going to see more of true freshman receiver Abdur Rahman Yassin. He made his Purdue debut last week. I think we're going to continue to see him. And as always, Jeff Brom indicated that all quarterbacks are ready if needed against the Golden Gophers. In last year's matchup, Minnesota jumped out to an early lead in the 3:30 p.m. kickoff at Ross-Ade, and the play that haunts Purdue fans still took place in the first half when Elijah Sindelar and Rondale Moore were injured on the same play. Just an odd incident that I don't think I've ever seen before. The Gophers led that one 28-10 at halftime. Purdue's defense was picked apart. Tanner Morgan completed 21 of his 22 attempts, 396 yards and 4 touchdowns. Rashad Bateman, 6 grabs, 177 yards and 2 touchdowns. Purdue was able to form a little bit of a comeback. Jack Plummer formulated a few drives. King Doru had 3 touchdowns as a true freshman, but Purdue fell to 1-3 on the season in that game and never really recovered after the 38-31 loss to the Gophers. Getting into our preview a little bit of this year's Minnesota squad, it all starts on the offense. And at quarterback, it's interesting because Tanner Morgan was spectacular in 2019. Second team All Big Ten honors, completing over 2/3 of his passes, 250 or so yards a game, 30 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions on the year for Morgan. He set all sorts of Minnesota passing records for a single season, but this year the magic just hasn't been there. It's been a little bit shakier. He's completed just 57% of his passes and 192 yards a game. He's only eclipsed 200 in a game once, and that was against that COVID-depleted Illinois defense. Just 4 touchdowns to 4 interceptions on the season. Not the follow-up campaign he'd hoped for. I think across the Big Ten media, there was quite a bit of hope for him this year and quite a bit of promise that he would deliver off of his 2019 season, a massive 2020, but as you'll find out is the case for all the Gophers, that just hasn't been the case. Morgan is not much of a dual threat guy. He is negative in rushing yards on his career. Certainly not a fantastic statistic there, but he is able to take off and run if the field's wide open in front of him. That is certainly not his forte, the way it was for a guy like Peyton Ramsey at Northwestern last week. You know, he's struggled to some degree this year. It hasn't been the year he's hoping for, but Tanner Morgan is certainly a threat to have a great day. He was fantastic against Purdue last year. Is Purdue going to be able to get a pass rush on him? Make him uncomfortable, make him throw the ball quicker than he wants to, and I think Purdue's defense is going to have real success. They weren't able to generate any type of a pass rush last week without George Karlaftis in the lineup. We'll see if they can do so with Karlaftis likely limited at best this week. On the ground has been the huge bright spot of Minnesota's year. Mohamed Ibrahim, the junior running back, I would probably consider him the biggest breakout player in the Big Ten this year. Through 4 games, he's run for 715 yards, has found the end zone 10 times already. 178 yards a game, over 5.5 yards per carry. That's just incredible stuff. He is dominating every team he faces. He gets an incredible workload. He had 41 carries in a game against Maryland. His fewest carries in a game this year was 26 in a game where Minnesota trailed from the start against a Michigan team that put up 49 on them and really forced Minnesota to throw the ball. Ibrahim has found the end zone 4 times twice in a game this year against Maryland and Illinois, and his big play ability is just everywhere. Purdue is going to have to tackle him well. They're going to have to hit him and tackle him. Arm tackles aren't going to cut it against this guy. He's been doing this for a couple years now. Over 1,100 yards as a freshman in 2018, 9 touchdowns to break out there. Did kind of fall into more of an RB2 role last year, but still, 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. That would have made him Purdue's leading rusher, and he was doing that on RB2 volume at Minnesota. In all honesty, he is probably the best running back the Gopher program has had since Lawrence Maroney in the mid-2000s. A real throwback name there, but a guy who did a heck of a job in Minneapolis. Ibrahim is the bell cow. We do see a couple other guys with carries this year. Cam Wiley, a freshman, 12 carries on the year for 71 yards. A pretty good yards per carry number there, but just 12 carries, low volume. Same with a fellow freshman in Trayson Potts. A nice start. He has 11 carries for 116 yards and a touchdown. Averaging over 10 yards a carries. Nothing to scoff at. That's good stuff. They don't use receivers in the run game a whole lot. And as I mentioned, Morgan isn't going to see a tremendous amount of designed runs. Ibrahim is going to get the ball early and often. Purdue did well last week stopping the run. 40 carries for 80 yards for Northwestern. Are they going to be able to do it again this week? Ibrahim is a different back than what they saw in Isaiah Bowser and Kyrick McGowan last week, Drake Anderson as well. Is Purdue going to be able to stop Minnesota on the ground? That'll go a long way in seeing how this one goes. At receiver, the star power kind of continues for Minnesota with elite junior receiver Rashad Bateman. He opted out of the season originally, before opting back in around the same time Rondale Moore has. Bateman has actually played, but he was first-team All-Conference last year, a third-team All-American wide receiver. 60 receptions for over 1,200 yards and 11 scores last year, and that was after he broke out as a freshman a little bit with 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Minnesota lost a standout receiver alongside him in the receiving corps in Tyler Johnson to the NFL. So Bateman's kind of the lead guy this year, and he's delivered through 4 games, 32 receptions, 413 yards, and 2 scores. He's been targeted 48 times through 4 games. Every defense keys on him too. You know, he's like David Bell in that sense where on almost every route, a safety is shadowing him, and he's still putting up fantastic numbers. This guy's a potential first-rounder, and just watching, you know, whenever the ball's in play, either David Bell or Rashad Bateman's going to be on one side of the field, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. After Bateman, though, there is a huge drop-off in the Minnesota receiving corps. The number 2 option is junior Chris Autman-Bell, 28 receptions in each of his first 2 years, so 56 total before this season. Only 9 grabs so far, 186 yards and a touchdown, and most of that came in a 4-reception game against Maryland where he found the end zone. He's been pretty quiet in their other 3 games, 18 targets on the year, second on the team, but that's not a lot of targets for a number 2 receiver. We will see Muhammad Ibrahim get the ball thrown his way a little bit out of the backfield. 8 receptions for him on the year. At tight end, they don't utilize that in the passing game as much as Purdue. Bryce Witham is the main tight end. Only 1 reception on the year. Excellent in blocking, but not a huge pass catcher for them. What says what you need to know about this receiving corps: they've completed 61 passes, and 32 of those have been to Rashad Bateman. You know, whenever you're completing more than half your passes to one receiver, it's not the best indicator of success. Up front, they're anchored by right tackle Blaise Andres. He is a really effective run blocker. Ibrahim gets out in front of him a ton and does a really good job. Andres, I think is how you say it. He is very good in the run blocking game. Not as great in the pass block, but Ibrahim's going to look to run on that right side quite a bit. On the other side is Sam Schluter at left tackle. Struggles in pass blocking, so if George Karlaftis can go, expect to see him lined up on the blind side quite a bit, looking to get in the backfield and make Morgan uncomfortable. It's a good run blocking line. Their center, John Michael Schmitz, another good run blocker. Again, not a great pass blocker. And you can see these trends in why Ibrahim is having such a good year, but Tanner Morgan isn't necessarily having such a good year. Morgan gets pressured quite a bit, but they do a great job of opening up running lanes. This will be interesting to see because Lorenzo Neal for Purdue was fantastic in clogging up running lanes up the middle against Northwestern last weekend. The linebackers, Derek Barnes, Jalen Alexander, did a nice job of crashing down inside to blow up plays early. Can they do it again this week? A short week, going on the road. That needs to travel with Purdue well for them to stop this Minnesota offense. On the other side of the ball, Minnesota's defense is off to a terrible start. They're allowing 35 points a game. Michigan, who has just looked inept recently, put up 49 points on them. Maryland put up 45. And last week, Iowa barely threw the ball and put up 35 points with ease and slowed down throughout the second half. They did lose 7 starters on the defense, and it's showing. Sometimes defensive starters returning, not always the best indicator of success. I know it's certainly debatable throughout the college football analysis community how much returning starters matter. Minnesota is showing that there's certainly importance to that. They're allowing 238 yards a game on the ground, 8.5 yards per attempt through the air. These aren't great numbers at all. Teams are having their way against this Gopher defense. Where are the problems? We're going to look at their starting unit on defense here today. And starting up front at the defensive end spot, juniors Izezi Otomuwu and Boye Mafe lead the way. Mafe, 3.5 sacks and a forced fumble on the year. He's their best edge rusher. Otomuwu has a sack as well. Mafe is going to be the guy Purdue keys on. Expect Mafe to go rush on the right side of Purdue's offensive line. I don't think they'll have him challenge Grant Hermans too much. And then on the inside of this defensive front, they start a redshirt freshman in D'Angelo Carter, and then a fifth-year senior in Micah Treadway. Neither of these guys have had standout years. Only 7 total tackles. Only one of those has come for a loss from this group. And it really shows with other teams running the ball so well on this team. Minnesota lines up a lot in a 4-2-5 setup, and at linebacker they turn to junior Mariano Sori-Marin and freshman James Gordon. I don't know if the 4-2-5 is necessarily helping them in the run game, but Sori-Marin, 20 total tackles on the season, 3 pass breakups. He's off to a really nice start to this year. Whereas Gordon, just 7 total tackles, not really what you want to see from a starting linebacker in the Big Ten. Freshman Cody Lindenberg spells in quite a bit at linebacker, 10 tackles on the year for him. And we will probably see junior Thomas Rush get his chance to stop the Boilermaker run game. He subs in a lot as well. Now getting into that defensive backfield, only 2 interceptions through 4 games. Probably not what you want from your defensive backfield, especially when you're giving up a lot of points. They do have experience back there with seniors Philip Howard and Coney Durr starting on the outside at corners. Howard's been pretty slow this year, just a couple of tackles. Meanwhile, Coney Durr is 4th on the team, 16 total tackles. A couple of those, I think one's behind the line of scrimmage, and he's also had a couple of pass breakups as well. He will probably be the one who starts the game on David Bell, but expect that to be shadowed quite a bit by one of the safeties. And the safeties for this unit, sophomore Tyler Newbin and junior Jordan Howard, will get the starts back there. Newbin leads the team with 25 tackles, forced a fumble as well. It's not great when a safety is your leading tackler. He had a really rough day against Iowa last week. And then Jordan Howden, 2nd on the team with 23 tackles, a pass breakup in there as well. I think the fact that Newbin and Howden from the safety spots lead this defense in tackling say pretty much what you need to know about this unit. Just not fantastic. Nickelback senior Justice Harris will play quite a bit for this unit when that 4-2-5 setup. He does a nice job for them. 8 total tackles on the year. Not bad as a corner blitzer as well. He's gotten in the backfield and made a couple plays. He has a fumble recovery. In addition, Benjamin St. Justy has a pair of pass breakups as well. He may see the field a little bit. I don't know how much I really expect him on the field, though. As a whole, this just isn't a good defense. Purdue should not have issues moving the ball on this team at all. If they do, it's a pretty good sign of issues for Jeff Brom's offense. Now, on the special teams, kicker Brock Walker is just 2 for 3 on the year. Both of his makes are inside 30 yards. Missed 1 from the 30s. One of his kick attempts has been blocked as well. Not very good. You want to see more, especially through 4 games from your kicking unit. They're just not getting the ball in scoring position enough. We also see Matthew Stevenson at punter. They also utilize a 2-punter approach, similar to Purdue. And then for the same reason as Purdue, it stems from a lack of a clear number 1. Stevenson averages 34 yards a punt. Mark Crawford averages 35 yards a punt. Not a great punting team. It certainly won't be a punting showcase on Friday night. Minnesota, they do have 3 different kickers they use on kickoffs. Only 5 of the 21 have gone for touchdowns. They're just not getting a ton out of the return game either. Cam Wiley averages 16 yards a return on 8 attempts. Ibrahim is certainly their best option, but he's only returned 2 kicks, and I don't think Fleck wants to put him in that position to get hurt much. Preston Jalen has a 17-yard punt return, but I just really don't expect a ton out of this Minnesota return game. Getting into our keys to the game here on Boilers and Beyond. Look, number 1 for Purdue, they have to have balance on offense. Jeff Brom mentioned this week. They abandoned the run way too quickly against Northwestern, and if you'll remember, that was one of my keys to the game for the Northwestern game. Purdue has to stick to the run game. I know Jeff Brom wants to throw the ball. I know he wants to utilize his quarterbacks and throw the ball all around, but they have to try to commit to some sort of run game and make defenses uncomfortable a little bit. Minnesota's awful against the run. Again, worst in the Big Ten at 238 yards a game. Xander Horvath needs momentum to be an effective running back. This is a game where he should be able to get it. Purdue's offensive line should be able to move some guys around and get Horvath a bit of a head of steam. We've seen when he gets that, he's tough to tackle. He is a unit. Are we going to see more of King Doru this week? I think so. His 1 carry last week was at such an odd time on a 3rd and 1 play. I don't understand that at all. But, I think we are forgetting Doru led Purdue in rushing in 2019. Another year of experience should help him quite a bit. And I've said this all year. Why doesn't Purdue get their receivers more involved in the run game? They had a good one with Milton Wright last week, but did nothing else. I think now that you have Milton Wright, David Bell, TJ Sheffield, Ahmad Anderson, Jackson Anthrop, you have all these options in there as guys who can take a jet sweep. Purdue really needs to start utilizing that. Number 2, Purdue needs to force turnovers in this game. We saw in the first 2 games for Purdue, they were really good at forcing turnovers. A couple of turnovers against Iowa, 4 of them against Illinois. Just 1 turnover last week, and that was off a tipped pass that Cam Allen was able to pick off. Look, we've seen a blueprint for success here. Iowa forced a couple turnovers last week, and Minnesota really backed down. They did not play well after that. Can Purdue do that? Minnesota's 1-3 right now on the year. They're desperate for a win. And if Purdue can force a turnover or 2 early, give Minnesota some more adversity to battle through, Purdue can get some turnovers, capitalize on them, force Minnesota to throw the ball. I think Purdue's going to be in really good shape if all of that gets done. Minnesota hasn't been strong coming from behind this year. Their only win was a start-to-finish win. See if Minnesota can put up a comeback. Granted, that hasn't been Purdue's best strength, but playing from ahead is much easier than playing from behind. And number 3, Purdue needs to find a number 3 target in the passing game. No one has really emerged here. I've been shocked at the lack of utilization we've seen from Ahmad Anderson. I'm a big fan of his. I think he is a really good option for Purdue, but he just hasn't seen the targets. Payne Durham had a really costly red zone drop last week. But now that we're searching for this number 3, Jackson Anthrop may fit in there. He's getting healthier. Played some last week in the second half. I expect to see him more on Friday. Garrett Miller, the redshirt freshman tight end, first career grab last week for a touchdown. Is he going to see the field more? There's a lot of options here with Abdur-Rahman Yassin going to see the field more. Can Malik Carr come back? Bell and Wright are a clear one too, but if Rondale Moore's not going to play for Purdue this year, they could really use a third option. It's that time of the week where I make my prediction for Purdue's matchup on Friday. Last week, I picked Purdue 28-27, and while it wasn't a great pick, it was in play till the very end. Purdue was down 27-20 with the ball, Got me thinking a little bit about my prediction, but Purdue fell short. This week, the game opened at Pick'em on Sunday. Now the line is Purdue minus 2.5. The total in this game is set at 63.5. Look, I'm going to go with Purdue to win. Purdue 35, Minnesota 31. It's going to be another memorable game in this series. For Purdue fans, there have certainly been some memorable ones. Brandon Hance leading a big comeback in 2001 in the Miracle at the Metrodome. One of the best comebacks in Purdue history right after September 11th. 2017 was a big one for Jeff Brom after the rain delay. Jawan Bentley pick 6 to seal the deal. I think Purdue's going to pull this one out. I do expect Minnesota's offense to show some life after a lifeless performance last week. I think O'Connell bounces back if he's able to play. A lot of fan frustration about the quarterback play last week. I don't know that it was all warranted. I do think David Bell is going to have a big day. This is a Minnesota secondary that has struggled for the most part. Expect to see David Bell have a big day. And Purdue's quarterback play, whether it be O'Connell or Plummer, will be enough to win this one for the Boilers. Elsewhere across the league this week, Michigan State and Maryland start us off at noon on Saturday on BTN. You know, the Michigan State offense has just been miserable this last couple weeks. Who's going to start at quarterback for them? Rocky Lombardi was benched at the second quarter last week, I believe. Meanwhile, Taulia Tagovailoa has been excellent in Maryland's last 2 outings. Can Mike Loxley's team stay hot? Vegas thinks so, as they're 6.5-point favorites. Also, noon on FS1, Illinois at Nebraska. Illinois finally broke through with their first W of the season against Rutgers last week. The offense seemed to find a little bit of something with Isaiah Williams, the redshirt freshman at quarterback. Meanwhile, Nebraska got their first win as well. They benched Adrian Martinez and got a win. Went with Luke McCaffrey and a true run-heavy approach for the Huskers in that one. Look, neither coach is impressing their fans right now, but Lovie Smith could certainly buy a lot of security with a win on Saturday. Nebraska is 14.5-point favorites in Lincoln for that one. The biggest game of the week in the Big Ten Conference, big noon Saturday on Fox, Indiana at Ohio State. Who thought this one was going to be a top 10 matchup coming into the season? I don't think many, but hey, the Hoosiers are sitting 4-0. They're playing really well, whether Purdue fans like to hear that or not. Michael Penix is leading the conference in passing. The Hoosier defense has really locked down quite a bit since their Penn State game where they gave up 35. The Buckeyes did have 2 weeks to prepare for this one after their matchup with Maryland was canceled last week. Justin Fields is one of the, if not the, Heisman frontrunner so far through 3 games. He has been phenomenal for them. Can the Hoosiers pull off a legendary upset? We'll see. It would be unbelievable for IU if they can do it. Ohio State is 20.5-point favorites at the Horseshoe for this one. 3:30 on ABC. Another big one in the Big Ten West between Wisconsin and Northwestern. Second straight week where Northwestern has a huge game at home this time as they sit 4-0. Boy, they're in really good shape. That smash mouth defense really expressed itself last week with a lot of swagger. Purdue did not respond well to their defensive backs, jawing a little bit after the whistle and really getting in Purdue's receivers' minds. Meanwhile, on the other side, Wisconsin came back from their COVID delay. Huge victory on the road last weekend, 49-11 in the Big House. In this one, though, they're not going to be able to run the ball as well as they did on Michigan. Graham Mertz is going to have to throw the ball well for the Badgers, who are 7.5-point favorites heading to Ryan Field. Another 3:30 kick as Iowa heads to Happy Valley to take on the 0-4 Nittany Lions. Iowa, back-to-back blowout wins. They started the season 0-2, even their record now at 2-2 with big wins over Michigan State and Minnesota. They've really focused on their ground game, and it's worked well for them. Their defense has made some big plays on the other side, and they're trying not to make Spencer Petras carry the load for them. Meanwhile, Penn State is an absolute dumpster fire, 0-4. They benched Sean Clifford last week, their incumbent starter, and the offense still didn't do a whole lot. James Franklin, not all that popular right now in the state of Pennsylvania. Are they going to be able to break out of this, or is the nightmare season going to continue? The Hawkeyes hit the road as 2.5-point favorites. Finally, the nightcap, a riveting game from Piscataway. Michigan heads to Rutgers, 7:30 on BTN. Is anyone excited for this game? I really don't think so. Michigan fans certainly are not. 3 straight losses for the Maize and Blue. The fan base is turning quickly on Jim Harbaugh. They have a quarterback controversy as well. Is it going to be Joe Milton? Is it going to be Cade McNamara? On the other side, Rutgers, not very good. They do play hard, and I respect Greg Schiano's group for that. They have a bright future in Piscataway under him, but I didn't like what I saw from Noah Vedral last week. 3 interceptions that really hurt the Knights at Illinois. Michigan goes to Piscataway as 10-point favorites. If anyone is putting their money on Michigan in this one, God bless you. That's all I have for your preview today. Thank you for spending some time with me. Next week, we will have our ultimate Purdue basketball preview show as we are less than a week away from tip-off. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond for live analysis during Friday night's action, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, enjoy Purdue, Minnesota under the lights in Minneapolis on Friday night.